Hi, welcome to the Transportation Committee meeting. It's January 24th, 2023. Since there's no non-attendees, I'm not going to have us introduce ourselves to each other. We've
Now, Mr.
reviewed
Hornsby, did you get him the link, Fred?
We have.
Sorry, what?
You have gotten him the link? Okay, he sent an email. I just want to make sure Mr. Hornsby got the link. So, okay.
Scott says he's waiting for the host to start, so I wonder if he has the correct link. Let me see if I can send him something. Let's see, try this one. So Scott should be joining us as soon as he gets a correct link.
I see him as an attendee now. Or Dave.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys might, as a committee, might want to bring Mr. Hornsby over when you get to that agenda item.
Hello?
Hello, we're just starting our meeting.
Okay, yeah, I forwarded around the link that I got the other day to several other people on the street, but I don't think they're gonna get anywhere with that.
Yeah. You might want to move him back to a panel, to a
Okay,
attendee until we
Mr.
get to
Horn,
that
I'll
agenda
call
item.
you when we come to that agenda item. We're going to go through the updates first. And I guess, Chris, if you want to run through the updates. Where is Scott?
I'm trying to get to the agenda and it's hidden somewhere here on my computer.
There's Noah. Let's see.
Okay. So just as far, I'll just get into the updates here without the agenda. So the only update I had from the recent KRCC or RTPO meetings was had to do with that one presentation about the RAISE grant application that some of the other agencies in North Kitsap are pursuing. I just wanted to get everybody up to speed on the Great American Railway Trail and the Sound Olympics Trail and give you the latest on that. It's not really pertinent to us, but I thought I'd share since that was something that had been presented. Other than that, really nothing of interest from the regional coordinating groups.
If Chris, I may, we want to be careful with that project. I mean, that project's a great project for North Kitsap. It really doesn't benefit South Kitsap, and they're competing for the same pot of dollars as we are for their funding as the community center for the public facilities districts. So we want them to succeed, but not at the expense of our project.
And also they're competing with us against for, we're looking at a RAISE grant application as well. So continuing to submit our application for Bethel.
Yeah. Chris, if you can bring Scott over from participants or attendees. Yay, thank you.
Scott, are you with us?
Yeah.
Okay. And then some of the grant updates. We've been supporting WashDOT with their 2 fish passage culverts down on State Route 166. One at Johnson Creek and one at near Ross Point. Is that Ross Creek? Right. And then as part of that, there's a new pot of money that's out there, a grant program for that the state has lobbied heavily for doing enhancement projects, and they look at this as an opportunity to not only do the fish passage culvert at Johnson Creek, but also potentially restore the estuary that was in behind the fish passage culvert. They're doing a number of fish passage culverts in Sinclair Inlet, and a lot of them just replace the culverts, but they don't really lead anywhere. So they're motivated to demonstrate to the tribes and also take advantage of this program that the federal government has set up at their request, and they don't have a lot of applications. So they're looking to partner with the city on a joint application. This would really be more of a city project than a state project, but because they already have a team in place, and they want to make sure that they're doing good things for the environment and meeting the state's obligation that they can to the tribes under the with the legal action that's led to them doing all these fish passage culverts.
So Chris, if I may, just for reference, everybody, Johnson Creek is the creek that runs back and forth underneath Port Orchard Boulevard and comes down and exits there at our pier. That's the culvert.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we're kind of getting this, what's almost a gift to the city, an opportunity, because it would really be more of a city project, like I said, than a state project. However, they're willing to take on all the financial responsibility as well as administration responsibility for this grant application. So I wanted to make everybody aware on the committee that this is something that the city is pursuing. We don't have any real obligations on this. The state will, like I say, they'll administrate, they'll do all the CAs, CM, project management. They take on all the financial responsibility for the grant with the match and then the reimbursement for the grant and pretty much everything that's involved financially. The kind of the worst case scenario for us is that the timing doesn't work out on a second the first application is for design and right away. But the second additional applications needed to fund construction. So the ideal situation is that they do this all at one time with their fish passage culvert. They also do the estuary enhancement, but potentially they may only get through the right of way portion. It might take longer than everybody would like, and they'll have to move forward with the fish passage culvert, and then the city would at some point in the future be positioned to take on the construction portion of the estuary enhancement, but we're not under any timeline or need to give back money or anything like that. So there's a lot of downsides. So I just want to make everybody aware of that. We also have our raise grant application that's due on the 28th. So that's the only thing that's really in the grant activity for me right now. Looking to resubmit on Bethel. And then, as far as the project updates, we've accomplished some work. We're on track on the Bethel Lincoln roundabout. As far as our schedule, we're looking to try to advertise that here in probably April or May. And it's just pending getting the permits that we need. We're also, we have 90% design completed, but we're looking at different ways to deal with the stormwater. Right now we have a bunch of vaults that we need to incorporate in the project, which that's gonna bust the budget. So I'm looking at needing another $750,000 to deliver that project, but we're looking at different alternatives about maybe we can reduce the number of vaults by doing more retention on different areas of the site. Maybe we can use an adjacent property that the city owns to store water there, so we don't have to build these vaults. But that's just a risk thing that I'm bringing up at this time, is we may need additional money to deliver the project. But other than that, everything seems to be going pretty well. And we've been coordinating with the utilities for some time now, as I've talked about in the past. We're hoping to get that work, the utility work relocation, done concurrently with the project. On to Bethel phase. Any questions on the Bethel Lincoln roundabout phase 5A?
Yes, Bethel Lincoln, also known as 5A, or what phase is that?
Phase 5A.
Okay, thank you.
So on to Bethel phase 1. So this is the one where we procured Shakehart Jewel, or SJC Alliance, beginning of last year. We've got going with some of the consultant work, sub-consultant work that's needed up front. We've completed the survey for the project. We're now starting work on the preliminary our environmental work, the geotechnical work that's happening this quarter. And the next up for the committee will be coming to you with some alternatives analysis and scope verification based on the 2018 study. Hopefully that'll happen in the first, in the beginning of the second quarter here. We've got the Bay Street pedestrian pathway. This is one that's really time critical, but last year we selected Skillings to do the 90% design and 100% design, and hopefully support us in with our construction administration and consultant services during construction in the future. They've completed a 90% base map. We've been out there kicking the tires on the project, trying to make sure that there's nothing wrong with the proposed alignment, making a few adjustments. We started coordinating with Puget Sound Energy, and we're kind of at this crunch time where we need to get everything ironed out for the right-of-way consultant for Tierra that's doing there's a few questions that have come up in their negotiations that we need to be able to answer so that they can move forward and finalize their offers on a few of the properties. There's in particular 3 different ones that we're having to do some design work to help position them to acquire the property rights that we need. And then we're also having to submit for the JARPA permit related to the construction documents, and we're looking to submit that here in February. So a number of things that are kind of coming to a critical juncture here into January, beginning of February, to make sure that we can stay on schedule to obligate the funds, which we need to do by end of the year. We're up against a funding deadline for construction funds, the $3 million that have been secured for the project. So we need to be obligated in August and be ready to bid the project in September. So a bit of a schedule crunch on that one. And then on the west side, the situational study, we're looking to award that study and preliminary design work from Kitsap Transit's ferry dock on over to Port Orchard Boulevard, and then studying the pedestrian and non-motorized connectivity around those areas. That's hopefully coming to you if we can get everything finalized through WashDOT on the 14th of February.
Thank you, Chris. So just to make sure I understand, on the prior item on the Bay Street pedestrian path, are there only 3 different properties that we need to get right-of-way ironed out on? Is that what's left, or is that
it's a little bit more than that, because we need to, we're cutting off
Okay.
access to the beach with the trail, so we need to compensate around 40 property owners for that. They're working
40, okay.
first of the batches of offer summaries right now. Hopefully that's not too controversial, and the timelines are shorter on that work. But we're down to
We're actually down to 1 property owner, one business for as far as acquisitions, and then these 40 properties. And I don't believe we acquire their property. We have to compensate them for the lack there's a compensation for their lack of access.
Yeah, their access rights.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, there's some access rights that we still have to iron out, along with some temporary construction easements as well.
40 properties. I didn't know that many between.
It's from West Bay Center, everybody across the street, and their tidelands across the road. So between what was Rady Jones's property back to West Bay, all of those property owners have tidelands.
I see. Okay. Oh, so it's never quite as straightforward as the. All right. All right. Thank you. Well, I guess, are there any other questions about any of the updates? Hearing none.
One on that Bay Street pedestrian path we were just discussing, on those 40 properties, is there going to be no access for those property owners at all? Is that what we're working on, or will there be access points to their property along the pathway?
Yeah, so that's the issue. When we build the pathway, then there's a drop off, and from the there's a railing that we put in at the drop off on the shoreward side, so it prohibits them from just going down the existing riprap, you'd have to crawl over the riprap to get to the beach. So that's the access that we're taking away from them. We do have access. We're looking at putting in some beach access stairs in a few locations. We're still evaluating how many and how frequently we can have those along the distance of the pathway. But we're not everybody's not going to have one in front of another parcel. It's going to be dispersed throughout the alignment. And I guess, the reason for that is if somebody there is some public area to walk on the beach within the right of way. So we have to kind of balance that with the fact that the tidelands are private tidelands and have the right signage. And, and then the reason to provide some stairs is that, people happen to be walking along the beach, and the tide comes in, and it'd be nice to have some surety that you can get up and onto dry land.
Okay. And Scott has his hand raised. Can we let him speak?
Okay. Is he muted? Sorry about that, Scott.
That's all right. Can you hear me now?
You can.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to raise my hand because I wasn't able to participate, but my question was exactly what Mark's is. But then it's also worth noting that if you've walked along there, it's not a very friendly drop off from the current pathway as it is. So a loss of access for some people doesn't really mean that much compared to the current situation. But I just wanted to point that out and then also make sure I could be heard for these items.
Thanks. Yeah, you can be heard. Yeah, I was thinking that area is not walkable. I mean, who would want to walk on the riprap? So I guess the question is, if they wanted to cross the street, cross the riprap and get into the water, there would now be a railing along that way, but they can just go over the railing, I guess.
No, that wouldn't be safe. So there's going to be there's likely going to be stairs at
Some access points.
some
Okay.
access points, and at low tide, the beach is walkable.
That's true, especially extreme low tide. Okay. All right, well, thank you. If there's nothing else on updates, let's go to our next item, which is the
Yeah, I'm
McCormick
sorry
Woods.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just brought up I wanted to bring up this figure here. Can everybody see this?
Yes,
So these are for the estuary, just so you understand the impacts of this. These are we're looking at acquiring these 5 parcels as part of that effort downtown, and it's about a $4 million effort for right-of-way acquisition, and about $1 million or so for the design that would be associated with this if we're successful in obtaining the grant.
and we would be attempting to acquire the entire properties and not just the frontage.
Correct. Yeah, and then there's some debate about whether or not the one that's the commercial center that's furthest east would be necessary for the estuary, but these are the ones that have been identified as potentially needing to be acquired for the estuary enhancement.
And Chris, you said these costs were all going to be covered by the state to acquire this property?
Correct. Yeah, it's about a $5 million ask, so it's a pretty big amount of money for the design and right-of-way phase of the estuary. But they have also $5 million in their project. So I forget exactly what the match was, but the match would be covered by the existing state funds that are in the project.
How far down the road are we with this, vision?
Well, we're not very far down the road at all. I mean, we're looking to submit the grant application, and then we'd need to accept the grant application that council would in the future. So, in another 6 months to a year, we may find out and have more information for you on that.
And in terms of the vision, this is a project in our downtown sub-area plan that we explored as part of the revitalization of downtown. It's also identified as a park amenity here at this area as part of estuary restoration.
And it's also going to be in the stormwater comp plan that council will see here in the next month or two.
Right, great.
Yeah, so I just thought a picture's worth 1,000 words on that, so everybody can understand.
Yes, thank you. I didn't realize we were taking out potentially those properties. Um, Wow, okay.
And we'll be insisting on a lot of, public involvement piece in the design process. So, I mean, there's, that at some point we could, if that's not something that works for the city, we'll just have to kind of see how that goes.
It's, well, it's an ambitious program, and I'm just concerned that we're losing what potential commercial areas, or I don't know, but it's probably something to discuss and get used to, I guess.
You have to recognize that that was an estuary that was filled,
Right.
that unfortunately with the state, once the state is required via the injunction to replace the culvert, and there's really no point in replacing the culvert if there's not someplace for the fish to go, because the culvert goes underneath the buildings.
Yeah, so the state's gonna put in a bridge to do their aspect, and then we have this minuscule 36-inch culvert, which is not helping the issue if the state does their work.
So how far up Port Orchard Boulevard would this restoration go?
Just
Not
those
very
five
far
parcels.
now, but at some point we'll be likely having to do that.
Yeah, it wouldn't go very far. I mean, it kind of goes to our, probably around our well site, at some point, the creek just empties into the estuary.
To the extent of those houses.
Basically.
Yeah, Scott, did you still have your hand raised?
No,
Did you
but I
want to
don't
speak?
feel like I'm fully in, am I? I don't normally see.
We don't have your
don't see
video on. Your video's off. That's
Hey, Chris, as the host, you have to click on the three dots on the upper right of Scott Diener's name and make him a participant, I believe is the action.
Or panelist?
Yeah, panelist, sorry.
It's. um, And then I guess we'll be getting ready for our next item, which is the McCormick Woods speeding topic. I have a map, and I don't know if I need to show it. It's just the base map 2014. If there's no other visual, that's a better map that someone has. I can try to enlarge it and share it, but or maybe I can't.
there you are.
Okay, we can see Scott now. And Chris, if you want to start us on the next item. The McCormick speeding.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a lot from the staff on that. It's just to bring up that issue as a discussion point for the committee here.
I think Public Works can speak to what they've done, and I think the chief can speak to traffic enforcement. Maybe you want to let Mr. Hornsby speak first. And
Well, why don't I just kick it off real quickly? I met with Mr. Hornsby about 14 months ago. This was something that he and I talked about. We did explore it briefly. There was some concern about the use of speed bumps or speed tables by the previous director. But in the meantime, Dave had been circulating a petition, and I don't want to speak for him, but has gotten nearly all the signatures that he wants for this particular area. So with that, I will kick it over to who wants to speak next.
Well, I guess I can speak up. So Public Works at this point has put our PCMSs out there, our portable changeable message signs, right before the residential area, between near hole 1 and 2, and also down there by Glen Eagle as well. Didn't make sense to put them towards the outside approaches to that road at Hawkstone and McCormick Woods Drive, since there's already speed limit signs there anyways. So we wanted to focus attention to where the actual residential homes are. So that's why they're placed in those locations.
Tony, I have a question about this. Do those machines log the percentage of people that are exceeding speed?
I don't think it has that capability.
Okay.
They do seem to slow down for about 2 seconds and then then speed right back up past them. We've noticed, but we do appreciate it. It's a start. You know, it's something.
So I can speak from the law enforcement perspective. We do get out there and work traffic as we can, but we are responsible for the whole city. We have some traffic emphasis that we've been doing over the last couple of years. Speed has been an issue throughout the city, so we do the best that we can all the way around the city. But I can tell you that my experience, both in this agency and several others, is that it's generally not visitors that are speeding through neighborhoods. It's generally people that live in the neighborhood. So I would certainly encourage some additional education through your HOA. Certainly in the last emphasis, we found that the vast majority of people live in McCormick Woods.
Yeah, and the HOA actually reached out to Ian today and asked why that they were out there, because they apparently had no idea that there was an issue. So hopefully they can get some involvement in this issue.
Hey, Tony,
So-
are these just slow down signs, or are these the actual speed type sign that show how fast the folks are going?
Yeah, there's a speed type signs that show how fast they're going.
All right, thanks.
And they're massive. There are big reader boards that we would put on the side of the highway. They're, what are they, 4 foot by 6 foot, Tony?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find a map. So is this only on Merrimack that it's being experienced, and is,
But as the chief spoke to, it is probably the biggest complaint I get throughout the city, and the chief does too. Speeding is everywhere. And an element of this is police reform, and people are not abiding law. And I don't know that we're going to get, we're advocating for changes as it pertains to pursuits, but I can assure you the legislature has no appetite for allowing for pursuits for speeding.
So the matter in front of us is a petition by the neighborhood for a limited area examination for what I presume to be speed tables. So should that be the focus of our discussion?
I think
I
that's
can
a
assure
great
you that
question.
the engineering, talking to the engineering staff, that we don't, as a practice, put them anywhere in the city. And Chris can speak to why we don't. I'm not the city engineer. So.
Well, maybe, why don't we let Dave speak? Because I think that will hopefully help set the stage for any responses as well.
Yeah, Dave has his hand raised, and we also have Jim and Don attending here as well from the community.
yeah, Dave, yes.
Can I talk now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so what I did was provide a little partial plan of the street. You know, there's around 15 properties that are adjacent and actually on Merrimack. That's it. The rest of them are arterials and green space. And I got, I think 13 out of the 15, I could get them all, but the people weren't around when I was walking up and down the street. But it's unanimous. We're all tired of it. I mean, it's just, they're doing 45 and 50. They're not doing 26. And I don't care if they live here or not. Something has to be done about it. And we've talked amongst ourselves. I mean, it's like, I don't think they speed on actually McCormick Woods Drive as much as they do on Merrimack. It's become a cut through for everyone that lives on the edges of Merrimack, especially the new neighborhoods down the street from the from the clubhouse. They will take that clear from the end of the, they travel from, say, Sedgwick all the way through up Hawkstone, down Merrimack to get to St. Andrews and beyond. And some of them go clear out of the neighborhood, since it is such a connector now, and there are so many new houses on Old Clifton that they will choose to do that instead of going on Berry Lake. And I'm followed by people all the way from the firehouse through my neighborhood and beyond all the time. But whether or not they live on, an adjacent street to me or whatever, something has to be done. HOA is not going to do anything. We've talked to them. We have no confidence that they're going to do anything. And just a few things, we think it would be a great start. You could put stop signs down around the corner on Turnberry and down on Glen Eagle. That's cheap and easy. The minute that it becomes less of a thoroughfare, I think the traffic's going to change. And that would be one fairly simple effort that's not expensive. And if that didn't work, we go to a secondary plan, which might be ramps or bumps. And those can range everywhere from the temporary ones that nail down into the asphalt I've seen in other communities. Whether or not this is something that's done in Port Orchard in other places, I don't know. I agree. Bremerton has plenty of them, but Port Orchard, I don't know of any. And I don't know why. But it's not healthy to be out there when these cars are ripping around the corners at 50 miles an hour. I don't know what kind of people they are, but something's got to get done. And there was I was just informed this week that there were speed bumps on this street in the late 90s. And somehow they were removed, but you can still see where they used to be. I didn't know that because I didn't move to Merrimack till 2014. But they were there. Someone at one point thought they should be here. I don't know, other than speed bumps. And, I also agree that, several dozen speeding tickets would make a difference. Word gets around that you can't go that fast on Merrimack anymore pretty quickly. But there was an officer out here one day last week. It's the first time I've seen one in 5 years. And you don't have the people, but okay, so let's figure out what else can be done. But there's a lady 2 doors down that takes care of her grandchildren. She walks with this big old, reflector suit to take them to the bus stop in the morning. And she walks with 2 canes. And they just move away from the side of the street that she's on and keep on gunning it. And there's little kids, there's old people. There's a big crossing of deer all the time, right at the top of this hill here. What possesses people to step on it and go that fast? I don't know. But the HOA is not going to do anything about it. If these are all our neighbors further down the road somewhere, I don't care. And none of us 13 people care either. But I don't think speed bumps are something that should be thrown out just because you don't have any somewhere else in the city.
So I just wanted to bring up this Google Earth map of the area. So Merrimack Drive here between Turnberry and Glen Eagle. One thing to notice is that you have a number of residential properties that are very in close proximity to the road that access from Merrimack, as opposed to other places along Merrimack here where the access to the neighborhoods is from other side streets.
It
So
it is, it's
I
very
think that
unique.
this is your front yards here in this section.
And that's the only area that they're talking about speed tables.
Mhm.
Right.
So, we threw out the idea, well, why don't we make a three-way stop here and a three-way stop here? So we when we change speed limits, when we look at stop controlled intersections, we always do a traffic study. And then we look for warrants with the stop. And typically, this has been wrote into the manual uniform traffic control devices. That you have to meet warrants. This is a national standard because what they'll find is that there's very little traffic coming from one leg of the intersection. It leads to more accidents and more severe accidents. So that's something that has to be carefully evaluated. As far as speed tables, speed tables can be good for perhaps for situations like this where there's a very limited area that you want to get people to slow down, but most of the time the drivers they'll slow down for the speed table and then they speed right back up, so they have limited effectiveness. And the downside of speed tables is that the people that have to slow down are the emergency responders. So at what point are you're balancing making this particular segment of street safer, but if the ambulance is responding to get to somebody to revive somebody, you're slowing them down. And is there a greater chance that people are going to die of a heart attack or some medical condition versus getting, hit on the roadway? We've got to balance that out. And there's also that's the major one, but there's a lot of other little things like snow plowing and other considerations as well. But the main one is just the overall health and safety of the public.
So Chris, at what point would you think a speed table would ever be warranted using kind of the life safety issue?
I mean, they would potentially be a good idea in local neighborhoods where you're not having the effect of multiple speed humps or other traffic calming that slows down the emergency responders a whole lot. One or two speed humps is probably not as big a consideration as if you had a neighborhood that had 10 of them and 5 of them on the route to get to somebody's in a house that may need emergency medical assistance.
The fact that there's usually another way to go to most of the other parts of the neighborhood, and the fact that it's tiny little, not even a quarter-mile strip here we're talking about. I can't imagine that overall timing is really much of an issue.
I also think we're talking about a handful of speed tables, right? I mean, to your point, Chris, a couple might not be as big a deal. I think we're only talking about 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I'm more, if you put one in at each end, as you enter maybe on these close to these straightaways, like down here and up here, as you enter that area, they'll slow down there. They'll slow down ahead of the intersection, but they're probably going to speed right up to the neighborhood. So, they're very effective if you have they're more effective if you have a mid-block crossing or with a tabletop or some particular one spot where you want to get people to slow down. They're less effective when people just speed up and get all that expense and not get the benefit.
I think 2, 3, or 4 of them right there at the top of the hill, right smack in the middle of that section between Turnberry and Glen Eagle would be the most effective.
Yeah, I mean, we could have one here and one here.
Well, it's the most sensitive
here.
part because people don't live on the other side, at the other end of the street, on either end. I mean, you've got the crossing for the between hole 1 and 2, then you have the tennis courts. People may tend to slow down a little bit there because there's big stripes there. And I don't think that's you got the park and the tennis courts there to help to slow people down. The end of it, as you go past Muirkirk and Prestwick, there's nobody lives on the street there. It's not nearly as sensitive.
Yeah, that was my first point, right? But
Yeah.
you know, we have to get people, you know, we have to get people aware of what's happening before they enter the curves there. And we really, to be safe, we'd want to locate one in advance of each of those curves and then several more. And then you start getting to the cumulative effect of, you know, how does that work for response times for that ambulance that needed to get someplace? So that's the rub. There may be other, you know, there may be other things to look at. Let me move this over here. And I know you've started out, well, we can't get the McCormick Woods community is not. I'll stop talking, let others talk.
It looks like someone named Jim raised their hand. Do you want to?
Oh, he's one of the neighbors.
Yeah, and folks that aren't speaking should probably mute so that we're getting feedback and
I just have one comment. This is Jim Brooks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
One of the big problems is that when you're going south on Merrimack, it's a big hill and a big turn around that corner. So you can't see cars coming. And even though there's a bus stop down there and there's a bus stop sign, cars are still speeding down that hill. They slow down for the golf cart crosswalk, and then they just rev it up all the way around the hill. So if we're trying to back out of our driveways, even if you don't see something, you know, coming when you start out, there could be a car right on top of you there because they're going so fast. And on the other side, if you're coming northwest and then north, there's a big downslope where cars are picking up speed before they get to the turn. And so there's also no visibility, you know, for maybe 100 yards there either. So this is the reason why we're having so many difficulties, is because all of the turns, the slopes, and the cars just going too fast and the lack of visibility. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. And is there someone named Don with a hand raised? Did you want to speak as well?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
speak on
Dawn and Katie.
Don and Katie. I've lived out here for 27 years, and one of the nice things about McCormick Woods, but one of the negatives, is that when you enter McCormick Woods, should you live on Merrimack or live on McCormick Woods Drive, you literally do not have to stop between entering McCormick Woods to your home. So you could be going 2 miles down McCormick Woods Drive, and it's just a free-for-all. And there's not very many communities that have that long of a distance where you don't have to slow down, you don't have to stop unless you're seeing pedestrians, children, bikes, which people tend to not pay attention to. On Merrimack, I was also going to point out that Merrimack Glen Eagle intersection, there is very much a blind turn no matter which way you're coming. We live on Merrimack now. Our post outside just got hit by a car that hit it and then took off. They were going too fast around the turn. We did have cars that were parked off the side of the road, so we don't know if they were trying to avoid the cars that were parked or what. But there are more incidents around here than I think people speak about. But it is something to think about. People have a long way that they can drive without having to stop. So a stop sign here and there would be excellent.
And my paper delivery got hit backing out of my driveway early in the morning about 3 months ago. Only because the girl that hit him was driving way too fast.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Chris, did you want to bring up something?
Yeah, so this is a nonprofit, and this is going more the, the initial speaker talked about the McCormick's community not being really supportive of in your conversations, but this is kind of it's called the Keep Kids Alive Drive 25. And they have a whole kind of series, a whole program around getting people to go slower in neighborhoods. And it's a great program for neighborhood associations to take on. I understand that, there's certain limitations with the CCNRs about posting signs in yards and that kind of thing. So maybe it would take a little bit of a, addressing some of those regulations or rules for the community. And the same would be true for the city, where we typically will only post signs that are in the manual uniform traffic control devices. So we'd have to amend our code to allow for this kind of thing. But it has been, I've seen this been effective in other communities where people start to get an understanding that their neighbors care about people speeding. It doesn't work for everybody. It may not work for the people that are going 50 and a 25. Maybe that's more of an enforcement issue, but it can be effective generally in getting communities more aware. I know that's something that I did in my neighborhood, and it was effective. I lived in on a collector street that was, a dead end neighborhood, but I just throwing this out there as something that would potentially be a good community / city partnership.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like we have a lot of ideas about traffic calming, from speed tables, stop signs. No one's mentioned rumble strips, more signs. And Chris, do we ever just put more paint on the road, like reminding people it's 25 miles per hour because they may not see the sign? Has that been known to ever work anywhere if you just put more paint on the ground?
Yeah, I can answer that, try to answer that question. Did we have other questions from the community here?
Dave, did you have your hand up still?
Oh, no, I think you heard where I'm at. I didn't intend to.
Okay, we're just checking. We saw your hand raised.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, that would be kind of similar to what's going on. Paint's a little harder than signs for us from a maintenance standpoint typically. But there are things we could consider, narrowing lanes from 11 feet to 10 feet. That can have a traffic calming effect. I don't know if that would be in this particular location super effective, but maybe that could be effective elsewhere in McCormick Woods. There are some treatments we can do with paint to reinforce signage. So there's opportunity for that. But again, I kind of prefer a few additional signs to doing a lot of pavement marking because it's more maintenance intensive.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Scott, go ahead.
Sure. So, I'm all about trying whatever else we can before we resort to speed tables. But let's say after a few months that it's clearly not working, what is the process for a localized area to request speed tables, and how does the city decide formally whether they should support that request or not?
So I don't know that we have a traffic calming policy, but that's something that other cities have, where there then becomes a process that would involve typically collecting data to verify that, to understand the extent of the problem, typically conducting an engineering study to evaluate different options, and then providing a recommendation. And then, there's other things as far as the interaction with the committee and council that would be built into a process like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, do you have any more comments? I think I found this. Okay, Jim, go ahead. you raise your hand? Jim, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I had one more comment, and that is that nowhere on Merrimack are there any signs that even say 25 miles per hour speed limit. So I think even if you put up a sign that said 25 miles per hour, it would remind people that they need to, take it easy and go slower. That's it.
Yeah, I think signs, paint, all of the above are a good idea.
There should be a sign on each end of Merrimack. After you come off of Hawkstone, there should be a 25 mile per hour sign. And then one as you come off of McCormick Woods Drive. You're right, there's none that are internal in between Turnberry and Glen Eagle.
Tony, how difficult and would it be deviating from any traffic standards to add additional signs?
It wouldn't be difficult, and I don't think there's a requirement that you can have too many speed limit signs, but I can check with Mark Fournier on that.
Sometimes the most common sense solutions, some
Right.
silly regulation prevents. So just if you could check into that.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
seems
I
like
get
too
the
much
impression
sense.
there's some people don't even understand that it's supposed to be 25.
So, yeah, I think it looks like a first step is looking into adding more signs to remind people of the speed limit. Especially if there are around the curves and the slopes.
Yeah, and if you got a couple extra stop signs laying around, be happy to have them.
Yeah. We try to avoid over signing because of the maintenance aspect, but if there is some, traffic calming reason, there's nothing that in the MUTCD that would preclude that. At some point, you're gonna not get very far with more, speed limit signs, once the information's out there. But I can see, especially from McCormick Woods Drive, it's quite a distance before, have many at either end, and it's quite a distance. And maybe this street we're talking about here is similar in some ways to that. But here's some other ones that they have to reinforce, check your speed, no need to speed. The idea that kids could be, if you have homes running to the roadway, that, there could be a ball that comes out that kind of sticks in people's minds. So anyway, I kind of always, this program, I think, has something to offer.
Even the deer crossing sign like you have on the highways, because they really literally come across my yard over to Jim's yard daily. And
Our yard also.
I've seen cars honking. I mean, is there anything stupider than that?
So it's important to point out, though, that Chris's solutions that he's offering here aren't signs that the city, that would be a partnership with the HOA. It would need a modification of the CCNRs because they aren't your typical, they aren't traffic signs that meet the traffic our standards. So we would need some collaboration with the HOA for this to move forward with this solution and be something the HOA did and the homeowners did on that street.
So the homeowners could buy a sign and put it in their yard, and they could bring it up with the
Their
HOA.
CCNRs would prohibit that right now.
You can put it in the right of way.
So that's an internal to McCormick issue where the residents would have to lobby their own HOA to put up signs in their own yard.
I think you'd want to maybe consider if we could put them in the right of way or not first.
I don't know that we could do that either, Scott. With these type of signs, we can put a speed limit sign.
Not with these kinds of signs. These
Yes.
look like yard signs.
Yes,
The other ones that we were looking at look more like street signs with the posts.
I think yard signs is a great idea, though. That could personalize that, there are kids living in this house that you're speeding by. It might get someone's, attention. If I lived in McCormick, I would put it in my yard until the HOA got after me. But that's me.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different, guilting mechanisms here that they have that, putting them on your waste disposal or putting them in your yard, some of that to reinforce the program. But the whole idea is to say, hey, this neighborhood is really behind all this. And, we're partnering with the neighborhood community and the city and hopefully we get, it's a little bit like a advertising campaign, I guess you'd say.
That's pretty innovative there.
But we would have to change our code to allow us to put these signs in, and that would take a council action as far as the actual street signs. And the community itself would probably need to amend its CCRs to allow this program to be implemented.
Well, their CCNRs don't dictate what we do in right of way.
Yeah, correct. And
As I understand.
the city could do the street sign part. And
Yeah.
Provided the signs met MUC, the traffic safety standards.
Right.
We need a code amendment to allow us to put these in here, because I think currently it says we can only ones of the MUTCD are adopted. We just, carte blanche adopt that, but we can also allow for other signage if we amend our code.
Okay, Mark, did you have a comment?
Yeah, it did. It seems to me like, I mean, there's a lot of good ideas going around here. There's a lot, these somewhat yard signs and all the CCNRs and all that kind of stuff that I'm not terribly familiar with personally. But the simple, quickest solution would seem to be to put up a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign in between those two signs that we've got there on each end of Merrimack as the first phase of trying to get this under control. And then we can look, down the road, you can look at these other additional signages if needed. But that initial step, it sounds like the residents are wanting something done quickly, and that would seem to be the first thing that we could do as a city to help get this under control.
I think you're correct, Mark, and that was what I asked Tony to do, is to look in to make sure that we aren't where we could locate those signs, and we have someone on staff that can do that.
Great.
Okay, that sounds like a good first step. Okay, do we have any more comments on this issue, or should we maybe wait till our next meeting and see if we have an update from Tony next month? Okay, Don, did you want to say anything? Yeah, your hand's still raised.
I was just gonna say one final thing. Merrimack's pretty unique. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Merrimack's a pretty unique road between McCormick Woods Drive and Hawkstone, in that the limited site, slopes, curves. And I think if it was me, I would put a stop sign at Muirkirk. I would put a stop sign at Glen Eagle and at Turnberry, because people really start to pick up speed when they come down Hawkstone and they turn on to Merrimack. And by the time they get to Muirkirk, they picked up pretty good speed. And we're the first house on the right side after you pass Muirkirk. And they're really moving when they get to there. Then they get to Glen Eagle. They're going uphill a little bit, but they've got those blind curves, sharp, deep slopes. I think speed limit signs are a good first step, but we walk all the time in McCormick Woods. We walk McCormick Woods Drive. We drive McCormick Woods Drive. They have speed limit signs. Most people are going 35, 40 miles an hour pretty consistently from what we observe. And so I think a lot of people will ignore speed limit signs. More people will pay attention to stop signs, but you could still get the emergency vehicles through easier than on a speed bump or speed table. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
I tend to agree with you on the stop signs. It's just as Chris alluded to earlier, they're not just something we can just put up without doing a traffic study because
Right.
of sight distances, the curves. Because if we put a stop sign in and it causes an accident because somebody
Right.
doesn't see the stop sign. So there's just love to just go put a stop sign up, but there's a process that we'd have to go through. And I agree with you that the stop sign is probably a better solution. It's just whether or not we can achieve that or not.
Right, I understand. It's a process.
We'll keep our fingers crossed, though.
Okay, that would be a good second step to look into. Okay. All right, well, let's move on to our final agenda item. I believe, okay, this is just talking about future agenda items. I think we'd like to revisit any progress on Merrimack at the next Transportation Committee meeting and see what we've been able to find out about adding speed limit signs and a possible stop sign. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add to a future agenda? Scott or Mark, do you have anything in mind?
Not at this moment.
Myself either.
Okay, yeah, me neither. And I think traffic calming is certainly a topic that we've heard before, and it's an evergreen topic that we do experience all around the city. But this was educational for me to realize the topography of Merrimack. So we'll revisit that again. Let's see, are there any other items for the good of the order? Seeing none, I move that we adjourn this meeting and see you at the council meeting within the hour.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
Yes.
you.